Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. It is Thursday, August 15th, 2024, and it is in fact 9:30 a.m., and I'm calling this meeting to order. As we gather today, we acknowledge on behalf of the County of Renfrew and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Omama-Winini people. We thank the people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. And I did practice that, and I apologize for messing it up. Connie, has roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, yes, roll call has been taken, and we have quorum.
Thank goodness. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? I see none. At this time, I will ask for a mover and seconder to get the open minutes of June 17th, 2024 on the floor. Moved by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce, second by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards. Were there any errors or omissions? And again, as Chair Donahue pointed out yesterday, the chairs are now supposed to be signing our minutes, but you need an electronic signature from us, correct? Perfect. I will make sure you have that. Thank you. All in favor? Beauty. And now I will ask for an adoption of the closed minutes of June 17th, 2024. And I'll just say that if there are any errors or omissions, they have to go back into closed. I will ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by the member from Deep River, seconded by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce. Were there any errors or omissions? I see none. All in favor? Thank you. We have no delegations this morning, so we will move right into our CAO's report, please. Over to you, Craig.
Good morning once again. My report starts on page 11, Chair and Committee. Item number 1 is an information item, just further information on the previously announced County of Renfrew Municipal Day that is scheduled for September 26th in the afternoon and evening, 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 p.m. Although the agenda is still being worked out, it will have a bit of a trade show feel, I guess, if you want to compare it to something. So I'll have a brief announcement or a brief opening remarks. I'm sure the warden will as well, about what the county is up to. And then we'll have a series of tables where our directors and our managers will be arranged throughout the room and or the building, and we will have discussions, open and frank, and casual conversations with the invited members from your municipalities, your elected, and your staff. So we're looking forward to this engagement. Actually, we're hoping it turns out well. But the agenda will be circulated once we put some fine tuning to it, and the invite, save the date, has gone out to your clerks or CAOs at the moment. Item number 2 is just a follow-up. Of course, the AMO conference starts this Sunday in Ottawa. We, as the county, have been awarded 5 delegations. I have passed out the packages to those that are being engaged to speak. The one change from the point of the time of writing of this report was we're not meeting with the Minister of Education. We are meeting with the Ministry of Education, but as Parliamentary Assistant Billy Pang, and not Minister Todd Smith. Unfortunately, he's way overbooked. But in any case, we are looking forward to these 5 delegations, and the speaking notes and advocacy notes have been forwarded to members of committee and council, and are attached actually in this package. Item number 3, just an update. For those that may recall, the Renfrew County Administrators Group started a number of years ago. It started, my gosh, I just did this math, 10, no, it's more than that, but 20 years ago or so, that got together to determine the best joint procurement of financing rates, known as the RAG group, and the treasurers and finance directors, for the most part of these groups mentioned here, regularly get together. However, the administrators haven't gotten together since before the pandemic. I think Mr. Morrow had a meeting, and then things kind of fell apart through the period of the pandemic. So we're happy to get once back together with the hospital and the school boards and City of Pembroke and others, and we're defining others as we go, as a small group to determine how we can work together on things like educational opportunities for our senior staff, joint recruitment, joint procurement, and others. So again, just a bit of information that this group is now once again in action. Item number 4 is a communications report, but I am not going to spend time talking about it because our communication expert is in the room. So with that, Chair, if you don't mind, Tina Poplinski will handle item number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Good morning, Chair, and through you to committee. It was a busy first 6 months of 2024. I've tried to encapsulate it here in my report. I wrote several media releases and, as always, also had cooperation from other departments where I just helped them by editing and distributing that to local media. Some of those highlights included our new personal support workers, our international personal support workers at Bonashare Manor in Renfrew. We took a trip down there and were able to meet them and welcome them with the chair, I believe, and Mr. Kelly and Mr. Belmore. That was a wonderful day. Also, the warden was there, and then, of course, highlighting Renfrew County Day at Queen's Park and wrapping up the Affordable Housing Summit and Mesa Gathering, which we've all heard a lot about in these chambers. They were very important events to the county, and I was happy to be a small part of the team that was able to organize and bring those events to the community. Social media, as you know, is a big part of my responsibility. So I have continued to do regular posts on all of our social media platforms, which includes Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. And since the writing of my last report to committee, I've also started posting on the county's LinkedIn account. So I've been posting jobs on there and just other interesting things and sharing things of interest on that platform. So I have, there is a chart. It got a little bit out of order, unfortunately, but you can see that I have continued to sort of increase the reach and followers. So that's good news. I've highlighted some of the top posts on all of the platforms of note. Under Facebook, the trail survey was, I believe, probably the farthest reaching post since I've started here. That was Mr. Hanrath in Public Works and Engineering reaching out to ask for feedback on how we can develop our trails, including the Algonquin Trail and the KMP Trail. And as you see, it reached, the first post reached 74,000 people. And that resulted in just of interest. I looked back on Zen City where the engagement was posted, and we did end up having 1,686 completed surveys, and including 668 on just that first day that the post went out. So that was incredible, as Mr. Hanrath and I had discussed it, and he noted that there was another, I believe, our transportation master plan, and it was on Zen City much longer, and unfortunately did not receive that sort of engagement, but obviously people do care about our trails here in Renfrew County. And then the next highest one would have been a post I had done. I went out to visit the day labor crew who were replacing a culvert just over on Mud Lake Road, and I think people, I've noticed obviously, like when I am able to share pictures and things happening within the county, those posts are quite well received. And as you see, my third top post on Facebook was a last call for the survey, so we got another sort of engagement with that post right near the end. Instagram, you can see a lot of the trail survey did well on there, also with a tornado watch. The weather watches are quite well received, as that is part of my responsibility too, sort of the emergency information aspect. Then LinkedIn, I've done quite, since I've been posting regularly, we've seen quite an increase, so that's good news, so I'll keep up with that as well. And then highlighting the top posts on LinkedIn, and the top one was the Lee and Douglas Affordable Housing Units ribbon cutting, which was an important day also for the county, and just highlighting some other of the top posts you can see there. And then just wrapping up with some YouTube statistics about our total views in that first 6-month period of 2024, and highlighting the top views along with the duration that people are tuning in for. So I'll stop there, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. We will come back to you, but I'm going to throw this back over to Craig for his delegated authority, please.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment about communications, and thanks to Tina for doing a good amount of work with that. It's part of an overall strategy to communicate obviously more with the public, and we continue to do so. So Tina's not in isolation, as she mentioned. There is efforts ongoing at the long-term care homes where Mr. Blackmore's team regularly posts, and I love them, these pictures and photos and stories about residents having driving range days and going out in the community and on bicycles and things like that. So Tina regularly shares those stories, as well as in Mr. Perkins' shop that on a monthly basis give construction updates, I think, and that's getting a lot of traction as well in terms of where we're at in the community. You know, we all know that the bridges and the roads are causing delays in everybody's daily commutes. But at least this keeps the communities and the ratepayers and visitors up to date on what's going on and when things will be finished. So overall, I think it's working and happy to improve as we go. Again, Chair and Committee, item number 5 is our monthly. This is, okay, so backwards a little bit. In June, there was the new bylaw to provide delegated authority to certain individuals. So on a monthly basis, we'll be bringing these forward to, as per that bylaw, to regularly update you on when and how it was used. So throughout the last month and a bit, this is the chart of delegated authority approvals that were done, a series of tenders that fell within the budget guidelines, and a number of agreements that were signed with the province or other partners. So again, open for discussion when we come to that. You will note, however, in the bylaw numbering, it's a little departure from where we've been before. You will note the letter D, and that will be used moving forward to show that it was a delegated authority approval and not a resolution of council. So just so we can track things a little differently at the end of the year, should we need to. Chair, that is the entirety of my report.
Thank you, and you just answered the question I was going to ask. So we'll go back to information item number 1, County of Renfrew Municipal Day. Number 2, the AMO Conference. Number 3, the RAG Group. Number 4, social media. Yeah, see, I've got to, yeah. All right, we'll start with the member from North Elgin Wilberforce, then the member from Killuhager and Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Tina, I just wanted to say thank you very much for some of the excellent communication. The ones that my council finds most interesting are, of course, those weather watches, the storm events, and to Mr. Perkins and Taylor Hanrath, the updates on the construction projects, certainly something that is really appreciated. So again, thank you.
Please.
My turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Well, you pretty well said everything, but you have to stop being so modest. This is the way of life, and you're really achieving a lot. And for you to scratch the surface right now, things are going to get a lot more hectic for you down the road. And congratulations for where you've taken it, and keep going.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you both for your kind comments. I should have mentioned the good uptake by lower-tier municipalities. That is an important thing. A lot of your NAW is great to share my posts. So it's wonderful that it does help to sort of increase the reach and to spread the word. And for those things that are the most important, as Mr. Kelly noted, sort of construction. I have a friend in Public Works who says there's construction season is kind of one of 2 seasons here in Renfrew County, and we're right in the thick of it. So yes, so anyway, thank you both for your comments.
I think, Tina, what you need to know is the more communication that you put out, the less calls and complaints we get as elected officials. So as you let people know that Opiongo Road is in the midst, I get less calls and less angry commuters, as Craig very astutely said, that add to your daily commute. So kudos. I do have a very Gen X question for you, though. What is an impression?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I may have highlighted that, or maybe I didn't highlight that one. I believe an impression is how many times it appears on someone's screen.
Okay.
Yes. So,
Thank you. I've now embarrassed myself on national television because we know how far and wide now our YouTubes go. No, okay, I didn't know, and when I read the report, I meant to ask you privately, but I think there were other Gen Xers in the room that wanted to know.
well, I apologize. I thought I had highlighted some of those definitions, Madam Chair, but next time I will be sure
Wonderful.
to do that. And thank you. Yes, I do have as you mentioned, Public Works, and we have mentioned that a few times. I do have a good relationship with the Public Works Department, and as soon as I receive the email notifications through Transnomus, I do kind of go into action, and I can go over there and ask them if anything's missing, or so. Yes, that is an important part of it for sure during the summer months. So thank you very much.
But again, more communication, the better. I don't care how we get the information out. It's so helpful to the elected. You have no idea, because we get the Sunday morning phone call.
So a lot of those posts do go out on the weekend. So yes.
No. That's I want them. That's
Yes.
when I want them to go out, right?
Yes.
All right. And number 6, delegated authority. Seeing none, then I will ask for a mover and seconder for the CAO report as a whole, please. Moved by the member from Killaloe, Hegarty, and Richards. I'm running out of people. Seconded by the member from Abbotston, Bromley. Any last requests? All in favor? And that carries. And now I will turn it over to Daniel with the treasurer's report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All information items for you today. Item number 1, County Council remuneration to June 30th is attached. Item number 2 is the complete treasurer's report for all of the County of Renfrew. Just to highlight a couple of the items, most of the variances in their report have to do with timing, specifically the timing of capital. However, we are starting to see some trends emerge. So forestry revenue is up in common with last year. Planning revenue is remaining high, again, a carryover from last year. If we look at Public Works, that's page 44, the largest variance there is due to the timing of the receipt of our temporary debenture loans for Foy Mount work. But we can start to see that there are some savings on the winter control line, so a lighter winter than normal. We're starting to see that so far. Paramedic service, salaries and benefits, mostly driven off of a slow start to the MESA program, as well as the planned expenditures under the nursing offload delay funding. We just have had a slow uptake on those programs. Page 49, just to point out, POA, you'll notice in that department, the budget is shown as a negative expense. That's a revenue generating department. And the year-to-date actual is not negative. It's actually, we are losing money on our POA court. Something I'm not sure has ever happened before, but that's what we're seeing now. Page 51 to 61 are your long-term care homes. Just as a general trend, staffing is running under budget. Not a surprise to anybody, but that's where our struggle is. And page 64 is the Renfrew County Housing Corporation. Just the general trend is that all of our repairs expense accounts are over budget. Not surprising given the state of our units, but just a general trend. Information item number 3 is an investment strategy. So at the last committee meeting, committee indicated they had wanted to review the investment strategy. So I've presented some information for you. As you can see, our strategy is extremely passive. We keep about $7 million in GICs rolling out on a 5-year ladder, and the remainder has been in our operating accounts. And this has served us very well to have that the bulk of our cash in a variable interest rate account as the interest rates have gone up. We have done very well with this strategy, but possibly now as interest rates start to fall, the time has come to make some adjustments. So I've just left some points for consideration that given our long-term financial plan involves consuming large amounts of cash, We probably wouldn't want to have locked-in investments that have penalties to withdraw. There is currently a BCA study underway inside the Renfrew County Housing Corp, which may involve significant investments, and we may wish to internally finance some of those, which we hope to have that information by September, October. So maybe delaying until then to see what the desire is. And the third point I put forward is that perhaps internally we don't have the best expertise to predict the interest rate market. However, AMO and LAS have put together a team that can do this for you through their one investment portfolio, and that would probably be the direction we would look to use if we were going to expand our investment portfolio, is transferring money over there. Item number 4, the non-union salary grid adjustment. As a reminder, last year, County Council approved that we use the June 12-month average of the Ontario CPI all items as the basis for our non-union COLA increase for the next year, and that such an increase not be less than any agreed upon union increases. So if we look at our June 2024 12-month CPI average, it's running 3.08%. Our highest union increase is 3.25%, so very close together. And so we are planning to use the non-union COLA adjustment of 3.25% for our budget deliberations next year. Item number 5, Madam Chair, is sadly incorrect. It references a reserve transfer resolution that we had hoped to do yesterday at Health Committee, but we had some technical issues and it didn't actually end up on Health Committee's report. So just as an information item, we will attempt that again in September, and we will retry. And item number 6 is just the delegated authority approval for the renewal of the Canada Community Building Fund, the former gas tax. Another 10-year agreement has been signed, and attached are the 25, 26, and 27 projections for those fundings.
Thank you. We'll go back to information item number 1, council remuneration. Number 2, the treasurer's report. Member from Amherst Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you through you to Mr. Burke. Very comprehensive, of course, as always. And I had noted the debenture loan because this is somewhat of a Freaky Friday treasurer's report, in that POA is now costing us money, but Public Works is a profit center. Mr. Perkins has realized $160,000 surplus over 6 months of this year. I'm looking forward to that $300,000. For those who may be watching at home, of course, it is skewed heavily by dint of a $6,740,000 temporary debenture loan that is skewing that substantially. Do note, though, of course, as per our reporting, this is our netting, but yesterday at Health Committee, Finance Committee will note once again running a substantial surplus on the paramedics. Likewise, that is unusual, or sorry, that has been atypical over the last several years. What this is not showing is both the Manor and the Lodge are running substantial surpluses right now, which is not reflected because the contribution from both the City of Pembroke and the County of Renfrew is precisely what we said it was going to be. But ultimately, at the June 30th, Bonnechere Manor had a municipal surplus of $2.5 million, and Miramichi Lodge had a municipal surplus of $1 million. So that's not reflected here. I'm putting that on the table only because that bottom line municipal surplus of almost $10 million is heavily skewed once again by the temporary debenture loan. But some of that skewing is then offset once again by what our experience is in long-term care currently. So it certainly is projecting a favorable. Once again, this is only through 2 quarters of the year, but very pleased at that just the same. I did, excuse me, I did want to, because I went back to, did not have time to do any charting, but I just wanted to do a comparison, and I looked back at this month's Treasurer's report going back through 2021, and then I used 19 and 18 also because they were pre-COVID. At this point in 2023, $530,000 in fine revenue had been realized. 22, it was 594, 595, and consistently in 500s. In 2019, it was $677,000, and in 2018, it was $772,000. It's now dropped 44% from 2018. I have to imagine, perhaps a question in this would be to Ms. Wilton. I'm presuming from 2018 that the actual dollar amount for fines has probably changed maybe more than once. So this is suggestive of, and this is not taking, the charting is there when we get to the POA report, but the charting is there and you're seeing the substantial diminishment. I had hopes in June when we saw the last report that I think was for May, it was almost spot on to last year, but that was an outlier when we get there again. So once again, I am challenged to understand if we have all of a sudden become much more law-abiding in the county of Renfrew. I'm disinclined on a meta level to expect that that is so, but certainly the data is telling us that there are much more fewer fines being levied, and it's reflected both in the Treasurer's report and ultimately in Ms. Wilton's report. I wonder if Ms. Wilton could shed light on how often maybe those fines typically are subject to change.
It's not very often, but they do go up some of them every so many years. And with the stunt driving and racing, those are usually more significant charges, and they're laying a bit more of that now. So you would think that you would see that realized in the revenue, but I think it's just overall the regular roadside tickets are just so far down that we're in this situation.
Okay, so just if I could ask a follow-up, Madam Chair, POA is the court of record for quite a number of offenses. Is it my understanding that most of the diminishment in charges being laid is being experienced in the Highway Traffic Act?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. It is. It's definitely the highway traffic matters that we're seeing a decrease. Our ministry level charges seem to be about the same as usual over the years.
Okay, and part of this is going to be, I think, illuminating within Ms. Wilton's report also, and I believe that operations also visited this on Tuesday with respect to the automated radar or photo. In any event, that's all I had for the Treasurer's report. Thank you.
Thank you I was going to address this in POA, but I'll address it now. We are not the only county or region in Ontario experiencing this. It's everywhere. So we've spoken about it at Roma many, many, many times. I know that one of my colleagues in the north has grave concerns about POA. So it is top of mind. Anything further on the Treasurer's report? And apparently Mayor Donoghue and Daniel have now cursed Lee for the following winter season. So way to go, gentlemen. Number 3, our investment strategy. Member from Edmonton Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you once again to Mr. Burke. This is a very concise reporting on the investment policy. And I think I did see this somewhere. It's rounded up to 9. Our holdings that are outside of simply our current account within BMO. I'm wondering if that's diminished because the amounts seem to be fairly static, but these seemingly are about the same amounts as when I first set foot in this room in 2015. So as a percentage, it's probably declined substantially. At the very least, when I'm looking at the chart on page 33, at the very least, I will certainly not quibble with Mr. Burke's assessment that I do not have an extensive background in investment policy, in interest rate, though when I read those who apparently do, I'm scoring not too much differently than they are. In any event, we certainly are aware through 2022, for about a year, there was a steady increase and dramatic increases. I think there were 8 different increases. We know now that we're in a diminishing environment. Whether it is going to continue, I am inclined to think that at the next Bank of Canada, barring shocks that we are currently seeing, that it is likely to decline another 25 basis points. Ultimately, we are in a declining environment, which is good news ultimately for our economy. It is signaling that our economy is stabilizing as well. At the very least, though, Madam Chair, what I would suggest is there are 2 of these that are renewing this year. The first one, the BMO GIC, I'm disinclined to think that we're going to get a better rate than what is there, but I'm inclined to think that when that is cashed in, that $500,000, if we wait until September, we may be looking at another quarter-point drop. At the very least, what I would suggest is those top 2 lines are $1.5 million, as opposed to waiting for those to terminate to reach maturity. I would suggest that we invest now those same amounts that ultimately will be coming back into the Treasury at the latest date on the 15th of October. So I would encourage at least consideration be given to allocating those sums early rather than waiting for the next Bank of Canada rate committee meeting. I am on this also. I am certainly encouraged and by the charting on the is it LAS, the one investor. That is a pretty good return on investment there. The chart was quite interesting also, and it shows the equity. It didn't pop to the page. Perhaps this would be on shares of presumably Canadian companies, which is showing a dramatic return on investment. I don't know what LAS has as permission to engage. If LAS does, I think some of the larger municipalities, if you have a certain amount of holdings, I think you have more latitude for your investments. But at the very least, if those are relatively liquid assets, then I would seriously consider changing the dynamic. I think the 9% is very small, particularly if we're talking about relatively liquid investments. And I think that should be given more consideration, maybe more thorough reporting on that particular aspect, the LAS, the one investment. On the other hand, I don't know, I'll defer to Mr. Kelly. Should I be making a recommendation by resolution on making early allocations on GICs for the 2 that have yet to mature this year?
Through you, Chair, I would recommend that recommendation.
And should that be a recommendation that we recommend that council approve, or do we have the wherewithal within this committee to do so?
You do not.
We do not,
No.
so it would be for council to approve.
That's correct.
Okay. So I would move that those sums that are currently held in GICs that are maturing in 2024, that those amounts be reinvested at current rates.
Okay,
Chair, wait, we just did caucus. I'm sorry, before you accept a motion, or you accepted the motion, you just haven't read it on, you haven't had a mover yet, or has been seconded. Daniel just reminded me, of course, that his portfolio, or his job description, if you will, does allow him to move investments around. So if this committee, to your earlier point, you can direct staff to do so, and we can just take it from direction to do that without going to county council then.
For clarity, and I'm open to a broad interpretation, we are not so much moving them around because these are the amounts that we are holding currently. If in fact we allocate a $1.5 million that are not currently invested, it's not moving them, it is investing a larger sum. I'm certainly open to a broad interpretation of the latitude that Mr. Burke has, but once again, perhaps a caucus might be in order.
One moment, please. We will caucus.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I understood that, to take money from the operating account and invest now, and then when the older investments come due, to put that money back into the operating account. That was fine, and it's within my portfolio. I can do that. That's no
Okay,
problem.
staff direction is.
If that is
okay.
so, then I would move that staff be directed to do so.
Okay, okay, but we're all good with that. Everybody's nodding their,
I think this is still a resolution, correct?
This is still
wait.
a resolution without a seconder at this moment.
So it needs a seconder to
That does
move
before
forward.
discussion.
oh,
yeah.
it's not just staff direction.
It's a staff direction by resolution.
Okay, does it have to go to county?
It does not.
Okay, then you're moving. Do you have a seconder? Seconded by the member from Deep River. Discussion. Member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Is there a penalty on doing this in advance?
No.
Through you, Madam Chair, there would be a penalty if we were trying to cash our GICs ahead of schedule, but we'll just let them mature and we'll just take the money from our operating accounts now. So we won't incur a penalty on this at all.
Supplementary.
Just to follow up, I think the motion, though, was to do it earlier, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe Councillor Donahue just wants me to take, so leave these two investments, let them mature, but before the next rate change comes, use our operating dollars to do that, and then, yeah, it's an overlap there. Yeah.
So,
For clarity, if I might, Madam Chair, ultimately, once these will go to maturity. The investments, the GICs that will be purchased now to take advantage of more attractive rates, ultimately will be advancing the maturity of these holdings. Like typically these are rolling over
Right.
on a 5-year basis. So rather than it being September and October 5 years from now in 2029, it'll actually be in well, perhaps August. It may ultimately be September by the time this thing actually comes to fruition. But ultimately, no, we are adding $1.5 million more of GICs, but then we'll recover and return to the operating accounts those that do mature in September and October of this year.
as long as everybody understood that, yeah, okay. I just have one more comment before I call for the vote. I didn't understand how invested AMO and LAS were in this one investment portfolio, and we had a presentation on it. It was fascinating. They really know what they're doing, which is quite something. LAS has taken on a lot of portfolios.
And I would add, Madam Chair, to Councillor Donahue's earlier comment, the one investment equity portfolio is the only way I know of that a municipality can buy stocks and bonds. They have an exemption in the Municipal
Right.
Act to allow that. So that's how we would do that. They're the only ones who do that, except maybe the City of Toronto also has an exemption. But
They probably do because they have their own act. Go ahead, member from North Algona, Wilberforce.
And thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to suggest, seeing that operations has done so well in their budget, that maybe we don't have to replenish that $1.5 million.
Who's the chair of that committee? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you, that carries. Number 4, the non-union salary grid annual adjustment. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if we could just go back for a moment. And I understand, as I said, this was a comprehensive, concise and comprehensive report. But I would seek to have some more information. I don't know if there are holding limits or terms, et cetera, with the LAS. As I had indicated in the earlier discussion, if these are essentially liquid, then I would like if Mr. Burke could bring forward perhaps a little bit more in-depth reporting on the one investment strategy that ultimately it would not be finance administration, but it would be council, can give consideration to increasing what currently is 9% of our holdings. And this is the first I've actually seen where our minimum and our maximum were in the preceding year, and I appreciate actually having seen that. That is showing the band by which we've come to experience. I know that all of the financial pressures are there that Mr. Burke has recognized as well, though I am not as persuaded that they are as real, those dragons, as perhaps Mr. Burke. However, I think that at 9%, it is a very conservative investment approach. And I say this not because I feel or I have more of an appetite for risk. We are simply here representing the ratepayers of all of our communities. They do not have access to what we have access to. And if we can offset what we need from those ratepayers through beneficial investments, then I think that this does bear some more scrutiny and examination and investigation. And if there's not a penalty such as there would be to the rock-ribbed GICs, then I would be certainly open to elevating it beyond like the 9%. 9% strikes me as pretty small. Amidst perhaps the further investigations, I'm curious what other municipalities, larger or with larger holding municipalities, may have as their thresholds as well. So would that need direction? I'm assuming that doesn't need resolution, Mr. Kelly, of perhaps the LAS 1 investment having a more comprehensive reporting.
No, thank you, through you, Chair. No, I mean, that's more of a direction to bring this back. Were you looking for at this next council meeting or in September? Did you want AMO or LAS to come speak to? I think that would be better if they actually are
That's
invited
a
to come
capital
do that.
idea.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Absolutely.
We'll invite them at their earliest
Yeah.
convenience to a council meeting. How's that work? And we'll note it in the minutes the direction to staff was given.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic to have a very focused conversation with a representative of the one investment. Fantastic, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. They will be at AMO next week, on Sunday, in fact. Okay, anything further on that item? And my apologies for not following up there. Number 4, the non-union salary grid. Member from Abbotston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate everything, of course, in the resolution is accurate. In hindsight, there are 2 elements to the policy we adopted, and in my estimation, that was a fallacy, or not a fallacy, but it was a mistake and erroneous. I have no issues on the CPI. It was an incredibly complicated formula. I think it was needless at the time. However, now that that's what we're doing, and I'm assuming Mr. Burke has a formula built into his spreadsheets that is automatically calculating this. But ultimately, it is the second element that gives me pause, because when Mr. Belmore and the various business units of the County of Renfrew are engaged in collective agreements, there are a lot of things that are non-monetary that are being considered. But when we're talking about non-union, it is exclusively monetary. I don't know what those differences are, and we're seeing it made real in this one. Each year prior to us having a standing policy that has now tied our hands, tied future councils' hands, my approach was always to look up what the CPI was. What's the appropriate inflationary pressure, and how do we reflect that in non-union? That was my approach. So this, in my estimation, was simply putting this into a static process. But the second element of it shall be no lower, that essentially every collective agreement that we're engaging in is ultimately going to apply to non-union. And that, in my estimation, is an unfortunate side effect, because ultimately inflation is saying that we should be increasing them 3.08%, but our policy says it's going to be 3.25%. I don't know what the difference is for any given year, but I will tell you that in aggregate, everybody knows daily interest accounts, that accumulates. So I'm certainly, this is an information item. There is no reasonable option right now. It is something that, whether we wish to have that as a discussion, again, I guess I will defer to Mr. Kelly, whether we wish to have a discussion at a future FNA, or whether Mr. Kelly believes it would be the appropriate for a notice of motion and a member's written motion be the process through which we might revisit this.
So I just want to clarify the non-monetary. Are you talking about benefits? Are you talking about a boot allowance for the people in public works? Because I consider, let's just use the boot allowance as an example. Those boots aren't enhancing the workers' lives. They are so that they can do their job. So that's the road I'm going down. I'm trying to figure out what you were trying to pinpoint in non-monetary.
what I'm saying is I don't, that's a specific, very specific example. I mean, I can cite lots of specific examples of shift premiums, et cetera. Ultimately, what I am saying, though, is the work conditions that non-union staff have, I don't know if they're subject to a lot of change. So ultimately, in my estimation, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is a baseline, and I think that, in my estimation, we should be decoupling non-union from our union. We are essentially, in the policy that we've had, said, okay, non-union, you shall be the beneficiaries of the union negotiators who are paying union dues, et cetera.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't following you didn't land the plane for me. I wasn't sure where we were going, but I did hear some caucusing going on over here. Did you guys decide on something?
More kibitzing than caucusing at the moment. We was trying to figure out the math of some of these things and a whole bunch of other little, through you, Chair, through a number of. This is a big conversation, obviously, to have, and we're not quite prepared to have it all just this second. But there's issues of wage compression, there's issues of work conditions, there's obviously the non-monetary that play into this as well, and the long-standing conversation about one not being treated better than the other, and all these other things that go on and have gone on in the past. And this was meant to create a bit of stability moving forward and be able for us to create budgets far ahead of time, so we're not debating this at budget time. Now, to your point about notice of motion, more particularly, pretty much like any action of council, this is well beyond reconsideration in my estimation. It's just a number of months and in a new sitting, if you will, a new session. So if you would like to introduce a motion at some point by written to introduce a new type of methodology, then yes, I would suggest a written motion. Or if today is where you want to make that motion, then that is satisfactory as well.
So if I might, Madam Chair, to be clear as well, I am not disposed towards offering an alternative to the policy that's in place other than the second element to this policy. Quite frankly, in all of the years of non-union wage increases, it was the CPI that I used as the basis point for which I was recommending what the non-union increase should be. What I am suggesting is the second element, that it should be decoupled, and that is what I would be, by whatever means, would be recommending, that we stick with, that we adhere to the 12-month average as of June, I think it was, each year, but that we decouple it from, it shall not be lower than any unionized collective agreement. And partly that's as I had indicated, I think that is tantamount to making our non-union staff union staff if we are using collective agreements as the basis for their wage increase.
Yeah, no, my thoughts are is that this again raises an information item. We are bringing forward in October probably, I'm trying to think when we start talking about budgets. When FNA starts talking about budgets, it may be apropos to talk about it then and introduce the motion at that time. And then at least we'd be discussing those particular items at that moment, as opposed to now. For now, we can, I mean, we're not so far out from setting the budget. I know Daniel's working on the budget.
Actually,
monthly.
if I might, I believe September is when we set our targets, is it not? Or heretofore, in September was when council gave its targets for the development of the budget, because I think you're already beginning to develop beginning in October. So I think the target setting was at probably our next meeting.
So then can I suggest that you bring a written notice of motion for our September FNA meeting?
So do we do notice of motion at committees?
Not for committee. No, you just raise it at committee.
Or at council?
Well,
if we're bringing forward the targets, so in all past years, one of the targets that was established by committee and council in September was the non-union wage increase. We have now institutionalized by policy the non-union increase. So it's not something that we set. However, in September, we are still setting, and off the top of my head, I can't remember what those are. Levy target is one of them, et cetera. Now, that certainly is the forum for this discussion. Is through you, Madam Chair, is that Mr. Kelly's suggestion that I bring this conversation forward at the September meeting in the discussion of target setting with an expectation of somehow putting on the table of decoupling those two elements?
Yes, that works.
Absolutely, Chair, that does work. Then that's the conversation in the notice. Well, the member would make the motion, second it or not.
Right.
And that's where the discussion would be had, and then move to county council at that time, should it be an approved motion moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Member from Deep River.
Sorry, can I clarify just before we move on, if I may? So it does not, so a motion could be introduced at committee without notice, whereas at council it cannot be introduced without notice.
Right.
Accurate?
That is accurate,
Thank you.
because you were
Okay.
dealing with that topic at that time,
Okay.
and you can introduce it.
Thank you.
Member from Deep River, please.
So just on timing purposes, would we not give the notice this month?
Oh, at county council, you mean?
Right.
Not if it's
Just the
not noted.
notice of motion.
County council, if I can, Chair, county council doesn't give motions to committees like that, well.
It gets kind of messy.
It does get messy. So the intent of committees is that you actually are giving notice, right? I mean, any motion, that's the notice. So if that's the intent. Notice of motion is meant for those items that aren't being considered otherwise, right?
Right.
Typically from council, where you give notice to say, I'm going to talk about this that we're not talking about. But
Well,
we will
and-
be talking about these items in September.
If I may, there is precedent because committees are also where information items can be elevated to resolutions of committee. So ultimately, I understand and I agree, so the committee itself is the notice to council. We are 2 weeks ahead of council now. Likewise, in
Right.
September, we will be 2 weeks. So the process would be that there's not a notice required to introduce a motion to decouple these, which I intend to do in September, and it will be dealt with by committee. If it succeeds, then it goes to council, the normal means, and the notice to council is the agenda package containing the adoption of the resolution at committee.
I think that's the cleanest way to do it.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
believe it is. Yeah.
All right, so we'll leave it. Perfect. Done. Yes, member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is, it might be an unrealistic ask, but I'm known for doing that. We say that it goes from 3.08 to 3.25, and yes, it's 0.17 percentage. Is it realistic to ask to put a dollar figure behind that?
I knew that was going to be asked. No kidding. I knew somebody was going to ask that question.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is, we can certainly do that, and this change is not a high workload change. Most of these are automated calculations. It's the only issue you run into is that it's based off of the staffing levels we have now, and so as we go through the budget process, if committee wishes or county council wishes to expand or reduce services, those numbers change. So what we typically like to do is lock in what we want the non-union to do, and then we know how to price out all those changes. But for sure, based on current 2024 staffing levels, we can give you a dollar amount to that.
So it will be an approximate.
Just to follow up, thank you. That was a terrific answer. But I think the theory that I asked the question was because, we look at it and say it's 0.17. Well, what does that really mean? That doesn't, not really significant, but we went through a 5.37 increase in our tax, and what does this dollar value represent into that 5.37? So when you see the real dollars, it has more of an effect than just 0.17.
Yep. All right. Anything further on this item? Seeing none, we're moving on to the number 5, which didn't happen, so I think we can blow past that until next. Try again, Daniel. Try again. And finally, delegation of authority. Okay, the report as a whole. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the member from North Algona Wilberforce, seconded by the member from Amaston Bromley. All in favor? Excellent. All right, and now we are moving to Human Resources. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you, Chair, and through to committee, good morning. Information item number 1 in the HR report is concerning an OMERS presentation. So in June, we had the pleasure of hosting an OMERS member services person from Toronto who came and spoke to approximately 40 or 50 staff were here at the CAB to learn more about their OMERS pension plan. We addressed topics such as contributions. OMERS also offers additionary voluntary contributions, the plan's features and calculations. This was done to help keep our employees well informed about their pension options and help them make educated future decisions. Information item number 2 was the Renfrew County Clerks and Treasurers Annual Golf Tournament. So that was on Friday, June 21st. Myself, Mr. Burke, Mr. Kelly, and Ms. Dombrowski attended, representing the county, networking with staff from our partner municipalities. Number 3, co-op placements. So again, in June, Council approved policy A22 co-op student placements, and maybe abnormally for a high school co-op placements to take place in the summer, I've come to learn they do now. We were happy to welcome on July 5th Susie Sanderson as a co-op student from Fellows High School in the Public Works and Engineering Department. Information item number 4 is an OEMC conference presentation. So on September 13th, I have the opportunity with Jody Buchholz from the local Renfrew Lanark Immigration Partnership to speak and do a presentation in Ottawa about our success using immigrant workers and the temporary foreign worker program at the Bonachère Manor. Sort of in the same vein, and I spoke briefly with the chair before, we're going to actually play a little clip of a video that I did at the Bonachère Manor with the Renfrew Lanark Local Immigration Partnership and WES out of Toronto, which is meant to help sort of sell immigrant workers and the whole process of getting temporary foreign workers as a viable option to other organizations. So I think Tina's got it queued up here.
Roll the clip.
During the pandemic, we identified, obviously, health human resource staffing shortage. We had to backfill a lot of vacant lines by using staffing agencies, which cost about 3 times the normal hourly rate of one of our employees. So we partnered with an agency out of Ottawa to assist us in locating immigrant workers internationally to come here. So they're a one-stop shop where we can get an immigrant worker ready to work at our front door. We've welcomed 7 international workers right now, and our goal is to have 20 international workers as part of our LMIA. One of the biggest barriers is the length of time it takes for everything to happen. Plan in advance adequately, make use of staffing agencies where possible to assist you with the process. With their help, it is definitely something that's doable. Another benefit is when you have your own employee, you're getting continuity of care, whereas if it's a staffing agency person that might be popping in and out every few weeks, you lose that personal touch. It makes business sense to invest in bringing immigrants over. It's not a short-term process, it's a long-term solution, and because of that, you invest the time up front and you get good qualified workers in the long run, meeting your demand. Immigrants work.
Good job.
Thank you, and Madam Chair, that's the information section of my
Who
report.
knew you were such a superstar, Greg? All right, we will move back to information item number, and now I've lost. Oh, this is so frustrating. I apologize. Information item number 1, the OMERS presentation. Number 2, the golf tournament. Yes, member from Deep River.
I just was curious as to how well we were represented.
Chair, through you, we had a great day at the golf course. We did not win any awards.
You got rained on heavy that day, though, didn't you?
Not as badly as the Warden's golf tournament.
Right. Sorry, that's the golf tournament I was thinking of. All right, number 3, the co-op placements. Yes, I think having co-ops during the summer, I think it's fantastic. Get those kids to work. Number 4, OEMC. Member from North Algona Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Belmore. I'm just curious, these immigrant workers, just listening to CBC this morning about some of the foreign workers, does this put them on a path to get their Canadian citizenships if they have a position like this?
Please, that's a great question.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the member. So to get permanent residency, it's based on a number of points. When they work for us under an LMIA, so a labor market impact assessment, which is approved by the federal government for us, that gets them, I believe, an additional 50 points towards hitting the target. Right now, I believe you need to have about 525 points before to meet the threshold to actually get granted permanent residency. Otherwise, it kind of works on a lottery basis and by different streams of talent that's coming into the country. So it's a interesting process, let's say. It's not consistent with Immigration and Refugees and Citizenship Canada. So this definitely helps them in terms of having the points that they need. Our goal, our hope is that they enjoy living and working in our communities so much that they do obtain their permanent residencies and remain in Canada as long-term employees for the County of Renfrew.
That was a great question because I thought it was once you'd worked with a corporation for a certain amount of time, they could write a letter of support and sponsor a permanent residency.
So there are certain programs, Chair, where there's things like that. So there's the Ontario New Immigrant Program, ONIP, I believe, and that kind of works in that vein where we indicate, this person works for us and we complete an application. But again, that one is for certain streams. So we've done one at Miramichi Lodge for a an RPN. And again, it's certain healthcare streams and certain, agricultural streams that program does work, where the employer's almost acting as a sponsor by saying they have a job. If you grant them citizenship, they can stay here working. So that's not the same for all programs, though. And I think Councillor Brose indicated there's been some recent changes by the federal government within the last couple of weeks where they're looking at tightening down on the granting of LMIAs and high wage versus low wage LMIA streams that could impact if we were to do future LMIAs, make it more difficult for us potentially to attract temporary foreign workers.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Member from North Algona, Wilberforce, and then member from...
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just as a follow-up, so do they accumulate extra points based on the number of years they put in the workplace, or are the extra points outside of that place of employment?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the member. I'm not sure if the length of service actually impacts the number of points they get. I do know that there are other ways they can achieve more points. There are some language proficiency tests that if they take and achieve certain results on, that gets them extra points towards their citizenship. There's some courses they can take that again help them achieve higher points. It also has to do with what sort of their field of study is, their level of education, unfortunately, how much money they're bringing with them. If you're a very, a rich person coming here that would invest in business, that gets you a lot of points as well. So there's a number of other factors.
Okay, thank you. Member from Gillow, Haggerty, and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Is there funding grants available for these programs? And if so, is there a time frame with them? Like, take, for example, the students. You get X number of weeks, X number of dollars. Is there such a thing?
Chair, through you to the member. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of anything like that where the federal government's giving grants to help bring foreign workers over.
Okay. Member from Amherst Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I too listened to the same radio program that Councillor Brose was talking about when I could no longer pick up the rock and roll station that I listened to the news program. So actually Mr. Belmore did delineate, because in that conversation, there was one gentleman was identifying that there were different streams. There was an agricultural stream, there was a low-wage stream, there was a high-wage stream. And I think it's important to also clearly delineate for our purposes, because I believe that the conversation that is picking up steam, I first saw this, I think, last week in a news item where it is essentially the low wage and perhaps the agricultural, where there is been a dramatic increase, I believe, since the rules were changed in 2022. that we've seen skyrocketing numbers. Most of the news items that I'm seeing or social media postings that I'm seeing are generally oriented to food service, particularly fast food service. And I think that there's going to be a very difficult and challenging and highly politicized conversation that's going to surround that. But I think that that is in streams that are not similar to what our experience certainly is in long-term care. And I think it's important that that clearly be delineated, that the conversation is not a broad one talking about, first off, immigrants generally or foreign workers, because these things tend to get conflated. And I think it's vitally important to keep in each of the lane precisely what the conversations are. Is that, I wonder if Mr. Belmore can say if that is accurate.
I would concur with what you're saying. Yes, there's so many streams, and you're right. I think the bulk of it is fast food workers, was the articles I was reading last week as well. It's interesting to know our existing LMIA at the manor is considered low-wage Lima. We were 4 cents short of it being considered a high-wage Lima at the time, and unfortunately there's zero bending of the government's rules. But again, I believe you're right, because it's healthcare specific. There's different streams that would potentially isolate us, as long as they only go after the low-wage streams that would be more fast food in nature.
All right, anything further? Well, if you're going to OEMC, I think that we need to go and cheer Greg on when he presents, and congratulations for being asked to present. I think that's wonderful. And now we can move on to the bylaw.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. And through you, the recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council the approval of the following amended corporate policies. Policy A07, criminal record check for prospective employees, which is an amended policy, and Policy E05, bereavement leave, again an amended policy, and that a bylaw to amend Bylaw 6303, being a bylaw to establish human resource corporate policies and procedures for the County of Renfrew, be adopted.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder to get it on the floor. Moved by the member from Killaloe, Hegarty and Richards, seconded by the member from North Algonah, Wilberforce. Little background.
Absolutely. So minor changes. Policy A07, the criminal record check policy, it indicates in there that we want to get vulnerable record checks, vulnerable sector record checks for certain positions within community services and DNP working through Renfrew County Housing Corporation. Unfortunately, we've had difficulty. I think many councillors may recall when they were getting their checks a couple of years ago, the difficulty in trying to validate that you're working with a vulnerable person is the difficulty. And they, specifically, the issue came up around Renfrew County Housing Custodians. Although they clean and do maintenance in buildings where there are vulnerable people, they're not considered as having a position of authority over a vulnerable person, and therefore the OPP, we spoke with Triton, who's the service that runs the background checks for the OPP, and essentially they refused to provide them for us because we were not able to convince them that it was a position of enough authority. And they have to ask those questions because they're kind of tied into being able to access the RCMP database, and that database has these rules around access. So we're modifying our policy to reflect what we're actually going to be. We will be able to get criminal record checks, not vulnerable sector record checks for some of those positions. So this change essentially allows us to do that. And then the second change on policy E05, bereavement leave. When we last changed it, it was sort of vague as to its applicability for part-times, casuals, students, folks on contract. It mainly spoke to full-time employee entitlements. So we've just added a section in there that clarifies essentially what the ESA says their entitlements are, so that it's clear that people don't have to ask us a question. It's already written in the policy.
Excellent discussion. All in favor? And I'll ask for a mover and seconder for the report as a whole for Human Resources. Moved by Admiston Bromley, second by the member from North Algonah Wilberforce. All in favor? Thank you, committee. And now I will turn it over to Ashley with POA.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the committee. Item number 1 is the Provincial Offences Quarterly Workload Report. As we noted and we're speaking about earlier today, we continue to see a decrease over last year's numbers, with the exception of May. Item 2 is our court backlog, and we are on target with our 6-month goal to getting things through the court system into trial. Item 3 is some background information on automatic speed enforcement, and it provides 2 resolutions that were passed at Operations Committee on Tuesday, and this will essentially begin the process of implementing automated speed enforcement in the County of Renfrew. The resolutions direct staff to communicate with the lower tier municipalities for their interest in participating in the safety initiative. The intention was to partner with AMO, the local authority services, who have been testing in Barrie. And let me just see, I lost my spot here. We can anticipate doing this workload within the provincial fences given the status that we're at right now with the reduced charges. And then there's also a table about the costs associated with the program that Mr. Burke was nice enough to help me out with. Item 3 is a note of thanks from our counterparts at the Ontario Court of Justice. They were able to use our facilities during power outages, and they were quite pleased with the support from our clerks and our IT support, particularly Mr. Hiltz in the back there. He saves our day time and time again. And we also received some compliments from the judiciary about that, so job well done. That's the end of my report.
It's always nice to get a thank you note. All right, we'll move back to POA administration workload. Number 2, the administration backlog. Number 3, the automated speed enforcement. Member from Adamston Bromley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. There is certainly an alignment between item 3 and item 1, the backlog. Ultimately, I am not persuaded that we have a much more law-abiding citizenry than we have typically experienced. To see substantive changes on a meta level is almost unheard of. 3 and 4 and 5% would be incredibly big changes. I'm no statistician, but I expect if we had a statistician standing at the podium, they would tell us that those would be enormous changes at a meta level, and yet we're seeing like 40% change. I will grant that I think 2018 was the high water mark, so to speak. So that is comparing it to the high water mark, but it is still substantially diminished over time. I do know that, and these are somewhat dated now, and this conversation is predicated on knowledge that the County of Renfrew does not do law enforcement. That is not one of the services the County of Renfrew does. However, it is one of the services that every one of the constituent lower tier municipalities does fund. And I do wonder what is, and there's always been the 2 components. There has been the base and then the calls for service. And I do wonder what is happening. It seems that the base is eroding. If this was a waterfront, we would be concerned that we'd be falling into the ocean with the erosion of the base that has happened over the last several years. Ultimately, and these are somewhat dated now, I think it goes back to 2022, perhaps 2021, the auditor had, in a focus on the OPP, had seen the same thing that we were experiencing with our emergency services, with the paramedic services, that the presumptive PTSD was having a substantial impact on staffing, et cetera. I'm citing that in a speculative fashion. I don't have any of the details. But we are clearly seeing that there are less charges. Ms. Wilton had said that primarily we are seeing less charges under the Highway Traffic Act. Likewise, I've lost track of the number of times we've had conversations in here. Mr. Perkins has often featured prominently in them as lower tiers are seeking to reduce speed limits. And the conversation inevitably goes, lowering the speed limit is not necessarily going to impact those individuals that are already disregarding the speed limits. It is an enforcement issue. So clearly enforcement is inconsistent with what our experience has been in the past. I do not have the specific information as what is leading to that, but I know in my capacity as the mayor of Admaston Brumley, I'm paying for base services. And I'm wondering if that's happening. I'm wondering what the staffing is. I understand the challenge with law enforcement of discussion, open discussion of what their staffing levels are. But I do wonder if they are And again, these are not generating surpluses, they are unspent dollars. But if there's an economic component to this, we're not experiencing at the lower tier. My police contract is escalating at the same amount that it has escalated, if not more. So ultimately, that is the incredibly long-winded way to get around to what we are now talking about is mitigating against not getting the services that I believe that we're paying for in another fashion. And I'm not saying this because I see these as revenue streams. This is not with a view towards generating revenue, but it is towards a view of beginning to address the common discussions in this room of those that are disregarding Highway Traffic Act rules and regulations. So I am in favor of continuing to pursue examination of where this would be, and I recognize that we're talking explicitly about the County of Renfrew while we're in this room, though there is a note here that perhaps conversations can be happening with lower tiers. Understand also that it's a very narrowly prescribed areas where these things are permitted to be in place. But I believe that we're not seeing the enforcement. If that's the case, then we go to robotic enforcement as the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Member from Deep River, please.
Once again, the town of Deep River and the Deep River Police Service stand ready to assist any of the lower tier municipalities in Renfrew County.
Thank you for your service. Member from North Algona-Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on my colleague from Edmundston Brumley, I do agree as well, just from some of the emails I received, that there's a concern about habitual speeding on some of our roads, and enforcement is not what it was at one time. And just listening to the City of Ottawa in some of their latest reports that the cameras are having a positive effect on lowering some of those speed limits. And I think it's certainly something we need to continue to pursue in Renfrew County and our own municipalities as well. Thank you.
So I'm of two minds. I'm going to follow up on Mayor Donohue's comments. We're paying exorbitant amounts of money for our OPP, but now we're going to pay for a different kind of enforcement. And so I really appreciate automated speed enforcement. I think it works. I think it's great. I think that the OPP or the province should be paying for it. That's sort of just my thoughts. But yes, member from Deep River.
So let's keep in mind that the automated speed enforcement, currently we can only use this in community safety zones and school zones.
That's correct.
So it's not widespread, and there is certainly advocacy to allow us to use it in other areas, but at this point we can't do that. So it is still very limited.
And it would be lovely to be able to move them around, like the 512 racetrack and Let Cemetery Speedway. In any case, okay, anything further on this item? Warden, please.
Yes, thank you. Having conducted personal research on the automated speed enforcement in the City of Ottawa, I would say it does work, as I was doing 9 kilometers over the speed limit and got an early Christmas present, or they got an early Christmas present. It was $86. So I will drop to, as best I can, either 50 or 60 kilometers an hour, but further research, I'll let you know. Okay. But in all seriousness, no, it did work. I was speeding. I should pay. And I think that's basically the principle of going forward. If there's a means of us being able to utilize that to assist in traffic enforcement, which may then allow our OPP to attend to other more significant and serious issues, and I'm not suggesting this isn't a serious issue for people that are walking along the road or crossing the roadway, but it may also assist the OPP with some of their manpower issues. So thank you. Sorry, personnel issues. Thank you.
I obviously followed somebody this morning that thought we had automatic speed enforcement because they were doing 80 on the pin. Anything further on this item? Then we will move to number 4, the thank you for, which is very nice. All right, then I will ask for a mover and seconder for the report as a whole. Moved by the member from Killu, Haggerty, and Richards, seconded by the member from North Algona, Wilberforce. You guys are really working it today. All in favor? And that carries. Before we move into closed, I think maybe we'll take a 10-minute break. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting used to this. I know. Is there any new business? Oh, that's, so it was sort of, it was self-serving, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm serving the committee. It's kind of an unfortunate item. This has arisen today, and the clerk and I have been back and forth a few times. There is a member that that is absent today. That is the member's 3rd meeting, and it behooves that member to pass along regrets at the time of the 3rd meeting, which was not received this morning. So we're in a situation where council or staff is seeking direction on how to deal with that 3rd meeting, and the clerk has the wording, I'm sure, up on how absences are dealt with, and it's left to the committee to certify or not the failure to achieve the 3rd meeting, and then to the striking committee to determine how. So we're just in a situation where we're seeking direction from this committee on how to move forward on that absence.
Ooh, this is uncomfortable. Gwen, do you have can you put it up on the screen? No? Okay. Okay, yeah, read it out. That's perfect.
So, their procedural bylaw, item 73, subsection D, should any member of a committee fail to attend 3 successive regular or special meetings without being authorized to do so by a resolution of the committee may certify such failure, and the membership of such person on the committee is terminated. Council may appoint another member in his or her place. Receipt of a written notice of regret by the committee or council will constitute authorization for purposes of the subsection.
Okay, thank you.
By your leave, the committee has the right to authorize that leave. Sorry for the
Okay,
back
so
and forth.
we can't.
It's up to you, but your procedure bylaw is clear on how it should be handled, and we'll just leave it to you to.
And I understand
establish.
that it doesn't create a great precedent if we don't do something about it, but at the same time, I'll open it up to conversation. Member from Amherst Bromley, please.
So as I'm understanding it, so council meetings are an entirely different beast. So the sanction in this event is simply the committee. Any member, whether on this council or a lower tier municipality, if you miss 3 months of council, that is grounds for dismissal from your seat, for you to actually lose your seat at that. We are not talking about that. We are simply talking about the committee. In my first comments on this, our procedure is clear. It is unfortunate. Where I'm in disagreement, and I'm not entirely sure that I understood you clearly, Madam Chair, because I believe this is precedent. If you're not adhering to your rules, you don't have them. And I have to presume that this was inadvertent. I don't know if there was any notice, nor is there any notice required of administrative staff to bring this to the attention, nor of the chair or any other member to bring this to the attention of a member. But ultimately, the procedural bylaw is clear. It is a bylaw. If we expect our ratepayers to adhere to our bylaws, then surely we are expected to adhere to our bylaws as well. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Okay.
And I believe that we should simply follow through on what we are supposed to do.
Okay, and I will say our staff are excellent at letting the chair know when one of us comes into this, wherever we're having our meeting, I always know who is attending and who is not, always. So I don't disagree, but I'd like to hear from other members. Warden?
So, going to step on some pretty tenuous ground here, but what I would suggest is that, we authorize the absence today with the understanding that I would speak to the member. And I say that because I think that's the responsibility of me, because I made the recommendation for the member to sit on this committee through to the striking committee. So I think I bear some responsibility. And I think when you look at legislation or practice, the head of council has some responsibility for council, the conduct of council and the conduct of members, short of the code of conduct. Before that's engaged, and this is not a code of conduct issue. So I would suggest to you that that's a means forward. I don't think staff at this point should be involved in an internal matter such as attendance, as long as it's not a misconduct issue.
Agreed.
And so I think that's an uncomfortable conversation they don't need to be involved in. And ultimately, I believe it's my responsibility as head of council.
Member from North Algona Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and having heard both sides of, the situation and how it could be handled, I have to say that we already, as a council, have made it easier to attend meetings by providing the opportunity that if you can't attend in person, you can certainly attend virtually. And so, again, our procedural bylaw is fairly clear. I think it is much easier not only to attend a meeting, but also certainly to provide notice if you can't. So I guess I'm leaning more towards my colleague from Admiston Brumley, and let's follow our bylaw.
Can I hear from the other two members here today? Thank you.
Yes, I do also agree with the procedural bylaw, but I do have some feeling as far as what the warden has said too. So I'm really torn, and maybe we look at changing the procedure bylaw to include the warden's suggestion, but that's a future type thing. But I think right now I would be leaning towards the procedural bylaw.
Deep River. I just want to hear from everybody. I think
It's now a requirement that I speak?
Well, no, I'm not. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Glenn, but
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think we should follow the rules.
Okay. Unfortunately, so do I. But I do like the warden's suggestion, and I think that it should be in the procedural bylaw, so thank you for that suggestion. What do you need from us, Craig?
Thank you, Chair. And without the municipal act in front of me, at least the councillor's guide or otherwise would suggest even the warden's suggestion is somewhat out of order. God, I hate to say that about my boss. That's right, very unusual. The municipal act is very clear that shall you miss 3 meetings, that gives you leave of your seat to the member of Admiston Brumley. Now, I understand this is committee, and maybe there is some allowances to be there, but again, it's not the warden's job to be in charge of everybody's absences. It's something that we would have to communicate on a regular basis to say that this member has been absent 2, you better call them ahead of time, and 3. That notwithstanding.
We are all adults, so we are responsible.
I definitely would note Councillor Brose's comments that this last iteration of the procedural bylaw that we looked at no less than 2 years ago definitely provided a number of avenues for you to let us know when you weren't available, and even the soft allowance to say, should you have another conflict, you can dial in or just let us know. I mean, we can't be any more easier than that, or flexible than that.
Absolutely.
However, the procedural bylaw as it stands now says that unless this committee authorizes the absence, then the seat on this committee is terminated.
But not on council.
Not account. No. This is just a
Okay.
committee
Just on
issue
the
at this
committee.
moment, and this committee has leave to make that authorization otherwise.
So do you need a resolution from us to follow the procedural, or?
I will need a resolution of some type.
All right. So the resolution would be that the member would lose their seat on the Finance and Administration Committee, and that vacant seat would go back to Striking Committee, correct?
More or less, and the clerk may correct me on this one, is that the Finance and Administration Committee certifies that the member has failed to meet the membership of this committee, and is therefore the seat has, the member's seat on this committee has been terminated.
But should it go back to Striking?
By right of that seat being now terminated, that's an
we're
action,
8.
that's a reaction to this action. So you'd have to have striking committee.
But there are 8 of us. Do there need to be 8 of us? Could there be 7 of us?
This chair, well, the seat is vacant. So however striking committee determines the composition of Finance and Administration, then striking committee determines that.
So I've got Abbotston, Bromley, and then Deep River.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sympathetic to Mr. Kelly, and I think particularly given the warden's comments, staff are not doing this. Staff are just taking down attendance, which is part of our requirement for quorum. It's in the minutes of each of our committee meetings. Staff are just putting in front of us the situation that exists. Council adopted our procedural bylaw, so I understand Mr. Kelly's reticence to engage. If we are doing anything outside of the procedural bylaw, that's ours to decide. It is clear what we are supposed to do. Where I'm also going to disagree, and I think, Madam Chair, you actually alluded to this as well, but where I disagree with the warden is it's not his job or her job. It's not the job of the warden. It's not the job of anybody. It is similar to the conflict of interest. There is no councillor in here that has a responsibility to tell some other councillor that they're in a conflict. As you had suggested, Madam Chair, we are all grown-ups in this room. Second to that, I would say that if we're going to grant to the warden that authority, then what is the sanction on the warden should he fail to do that and keep informed that member? Now are we making someone else responsible for that member's absence? That's why I'm very careful. What I would say is, particularly as you were getting into the conversation on the striking committee, the striking committee is at the call, well, I don't know if it's at the call of the chair or at the call of the warden, perhaps both.
I think the warden.
In any event, where the recommendation for positions of councillors is made by the warden to the striking committee, should the decision be made that the member be terminated from the striking committee, I don't think there's anything in the procedural bylaw that says they cannot be reappointed. If the warden feels so strongly about that, but it would not be by dint of us disregarding our procedural. It would be because that would be the recommendation of the warden to the striking committee, and should the striking committee be persuaded so that the member be returned, then we are absolutely adhering to our procedural bylaw and our policies.
True. All right, can I have a mover for the resolution, please? Sorry.
Read that once again. Mr. Kelly, I think, Mr. Kelly, you had a verbal, but if you could read it again or say it.
Yeah, no, through you, Chair, I would suggest, and again, clerk, feel free to change my words, is that the committee certifies that member Valerie Yan has failed to meet the membership of this committee, and as such, her position on this committee has been terminated as per procedural bylaw, and we'll quote the section on that procedural bylaw.
Okay, may I have a mover, moved by Abbotston, Bromley? Oh.
So my comment was around, well, 2 things. One is I appreciate the warden stepping up and wanting to do that, but I would agree that it's not any member's responsibility to hold any of us accountable. So thanks, good try. But my main point is the wording of the resolution. I don't like the word terminate. I think that it should be based on blah, 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 blah. The seat, we declare the seat vacant.
Vacated. Yeah, I like the word vacated as well.
Sorry, could I give it a try?
Sure.
As per
Look at
procedural
this.
bylaw.
This is awesome.
That the Finance and Administration Committee deems Councillor Valerie Yon disqualified from the Finance and Administration Committee and deem her seat vacant, and upon the recommendation of the striking committee, appoint another member to fill the vacancy. And this is as per procedural bylaw 73I.
Member from Edmonton Bromley.
If I might, I would like to slightly amend that. I would like to include the rationale, which is having missed three successive meetings, so the rationale of why the seat is being declared vacant. And I would also like to remove the word another, because that is then reducing or is tying the hands of the scenario that I painted as a possibility. If it is another member, it shall not then be the current member.
Okay.
Shall appoint a member.
A member, exactly.
Okay. No matter what, the warden or striking has to appoint another vice chair as well, just so you guys know. Okay, now can I have a mover and seconder? I'm sure, do you want to read it again? Okay. Sure. This is going sideways on me. No? Okay.
That the Finance and Administration Committee deems Councillor Valerie Yon disqualified from the Finance and Administration Committee and deem her seat vacant due to attendance of 3 successive meetings, and upon recommendation of the striking committee, appoint a member to fill the vacancy.
Everybody happy? I mean, we're not, but happy with the word. Moved by the member from Edmonton Bromley, seconded by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards. Is there any other discussion? Then I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Is there any other new business?
That will be all. Thank you.
He deserved that. All right. Now we are going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to come back. We're going to go into closed. Thank you all. Thank you. We are going back to new business, and the member from Deep River, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I wanted to bring up on the new business and then forgot, and now I've remembered again, is I would like to request, at I guess committee's indulgence, that in the new diligent community that we get access to all of the committee's agendas and reports so that we can see them. So right now, if we go under meetings, I can see upcoming, which is this one. I can see previous meetings, and I can see operations, finance and admin, and county council.
Yep.
But is there a possibility that we could have 5 more tabs across there for the different committees?
Member for Babaston Bromley seems to have an answer, but I'm going to go to Gwen.
Well, the only thing that we do not have access to currently, and I am in agreement with my colleague from Deep River, but there is the public tab on the left-hand side, because I actually did download all of the agenda reports for all of the committees. Because it's on the public site, the closed reports, of course, are not there, which is somewhat limiting. I don't know what the perspective might be of well, I suppose Ms. Dombrowski as legislative services, et cetera. But ultimately, the open reports are available for download on the public tab on Diligent.
Okay, well, as our staff know, I had a lot of problems with my Diligent over the weekend, so I'll trust you on that. I'm not even going to try and go into it right now. Gwen, did you have thoughts?
No, I was just going to actually say what Councillor Donahue had mentioned.
So he stole your thunder.
Yeah, the public site hasn't been launched yet, but you, as a member of council, you do have access to it, but at one point that'll be a public site for everybody to have access to. We just haven't launched it. And yes, but I will look into having the closed sessions and stuff, et cetera, for you.
It probably would be easier for us, though, if we did, in that previous tab, have all of the committees for all of us. I think that would be an easier way to do it, if it's possible.
Yep, we'll look into it and have it done. Yep.
Thank you. Including the closed, yes. Yes, member from Kiloo, Haggerty, and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just for convenience, or if you could indulge us to have a tutorial, once that is up and running, just walk everyone through it step by step, because some people are more computer savvy than others, and it might be a benefit to everyone.
Okay, I'm defending myself here. This was not user error. I knew exactly how to use it. It just wouldn't let me access Craig's report. Go ahead, Gwen.
There was, in the initial email that was sent out to all council members to log in, there were tutorials added right from Diligent, but we are happy as staff to sit down and do a personal one with each hands-on, if that's what's required.
There you go. Personal tutor. All right, thank you for that. Is there anything further? All right, then. Now, I have a recommendation that pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, the Finance and Administration Committee moves into closed meeting to discuss the following items: labor relations or employee negotiations, pay equity, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, paramedic-based treatment centers. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the member from North Algona Wilberforce, second by the member from Kiloo, Haggerty, and Richards. All in favor? And we are now in closed. Excellent. Welcome back, everyone. The date of our next meeting is Monday, September 16th, because a whole bunch of us are going to OEMC, and I will ask for a mover and seconder to adjourn. The warden emphatically, and the member from North Algona Wilberforce. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.